Welcome to our weekly 3-minute therapy podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, clinical psychologist and author. And as usual, I'm here with my co-host, Mick Berry, and we do these 3-minute therapy podcasts almost every week. And 3-minute therapy is based on REBT, rational emotive behavior therapy, which was developed, created, and promoted by Albert Ellis in the 1950s. And many cognitive behavior therapies have followed from that. The idea of rational emotive behavior therapy is that it's never situations themselves that cause our emotions and behaviors, but rather it's our thinking about those situations, and usually the kind of thinking that creates disturbed emotions and behaviors are thinking in terms of demands. Must, shoulds, supposed tos, have tos, demands we put on ourselves. I must do well and get approval. Demands we put on others. Others must treat me fairly, kindly, and considerately and reciprocally, and demands we put on the conditions of our life. My life must be fair, easy, and hassle-free. So when you have those demands, you tend to create emotional and behavioral disturbance. And the solution is to shed the light of day on those demands and ask yourself, is there any evidence to support these demands? And if you're thinking clearly, you'll see that there is no evidence for demands, there's evidence for desires, preferences, and wishes. It would be preferable if I did well and got approval. It would be nice if others treated me well. It would be lovely if my life didn't have hassles and conveniences and discomforts, but it's only disadvantageous if these things happen, not the end of the world. Mick, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sometimes it can be highly disadvantageous if something we want doesn't happen, and it can be quite difficult to deal with, but it's still not the end of the world. But saying it's disadvantageous, I think, can downplay the reality. Sometimes things are severely disappointing or severely emotionally painful, but it's still not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great addition. So thanks for that.
I have something else to
Yeah.
add. You said usually when there's a mental disturbance, there's a demand. Isn't it always 100% of the time due to a demand? How could you say usually?
Well, I think there are severe or psychotic mental disturbances like schizophrenia, which
Okay.
aren't involved with cognition, but more with problems with your brain. Does
Yeah,
that make
okay.
sense?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that when we're talking about mental disturbance, though, I think of mental disturbance as depression, rage, and anxiety.
Yeah, right.
And I remember you telling me that you've worked with schizophrenics and were able to teach them REBT so that they could deal with their schizophrenia much more easily.
That's right. But they still had schizophrenia. They just dealt with it more easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, good. So today the topic is sex, porn, and masturbation addiction, which largely males have, but females have also at times, especially the masturbation and porn addiction. Um, and as we said earlier, if you have an addiction, then it means it comes from a demand. And by an addiction, we mean any behavior that you engage in that interferes with, blocks, or sabotages your long-term goals. And the way to, and some of the demands that people have that lead to these addictions are often, I must have relief right now from my sexual urge, or I must feel good right now, or I can't stand the frustration of not having sex when I want it. And I've also had clients who felt guilty about using pornography and masturbating And their demand is, I'm no good because I engaged in this. I must not engage in it. And sometimes people uh, addictively engage in this because they have a can't stand it. I can't stand having sexual frustration. And uh, and this involves LFT, low frustration tolerance. If you're frustrated, sexually frustrated, and you'd be better off not having some sexual release, then, but you do it anyway, then that's low frustration tolerance. So the choice is without the demands, I can engage moderately or not at all, and it's a choice. So if you see it as a choice and not a compulsion, then you'd be much better off. And Mick, did you want to add something, anything to that?
Well, yeah, because I'm glad you mentioned the word compulsion because I believe you initially said we define addiction as anything that interferes with your long-term goals. However, I think perennially or compulsively interferes with your long-term goals is key because let's say I have the goal to go to work and one day I go out kite flying instead and I realize, well, that was silly. I blew off work to go kite flying. And then I decide, well, I'm not going to do that again. It's the only incident I have of kite flying. And then I'm able to relegate kite flying to the weekends. Then I wouldn't say that I'm addicted to kite flying. If I did kite flying every day, then I'd say I'm addicted to kite flying. But if it only interfere with my long-term goal of having a job one time and then I'm able to just do it on weekends for fun, I don't see that as an addiction.
Yeah, that's a great addition. So it would be a repeated behavior that interferes with, blocks, or sabotages your long-term goals, not a one time. Yeah, Mick?
And I think it would be a repeated behavior in which somebody feels like they have no control over it.
Yes, right.
Yeah, where they do actually have control. Now, the thing is, with addictions, we'll get back to the topic at hand, but with pardon the pun, but, or maybe don't pardon the pun. You don't get the pun? The topic at hand? Hello?
I see.
All right. I remember the thing is, with an addiction like drinking, uh, I remember you once telling me theoretically anybody can learn to drink moderately, but human beings defy theories. And I remember you telling me about clients you've had where they thought they might have had a drinking problem, and you say, well, let's just do an experiment, attempt to give it up, and you get four chances to drink moderately. And if you don't, then it's probably a better idea to just eliminate drinking altogether. Because as we know, once somebody is under the influence of alcohol, their better judgment often flies out the window. So I think it's unrealistic to expect yourself to be able to think fully rationally if you're under the influence of alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point. And when I work with people who have an alcohol problem, I say you have a choice in terms of the solution. Do you want to abstain entirely or just drink moderately? And if they say they don't know, then I say, well, have you tried to drink moderately? And they say, well, yes. How many times? Well, many, 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 many times. So now you've learned that drinking moderately for you is probably off the table. And for the next month or 2 months, just abstain, and then reevaluate your goals at the end of that time.
Yeah, and I remember another client, and I guess this does pertain because we're talking about addiction. You mentioned a client that was addicted to social media, and his solution was to abstain from all social media. And I said, well, doesn't that seem a little drastic? And I believe you told me, well, he tried to do it moderately many, many, many times, and we decided the best solution was for him to have nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And if you're interested in our podcast on media addiction, been a recent one, just the last couple of weeks. So you could check that out.
So, with this addiction to watching porn or engaging in uh, sexual personal sexual, I'm trying not to use the word masturbating.
Well,
Anyway,
you could say release.
and engaging in masturbating. Um, I think that's a fairly normal human activity, and I think many people engage in it without it being an addiction and without it interfering in someone's life or for their long-term goals.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I suppose it's just a matter of observing what does this interfere once in a while? Like, might I do it and get to work late once a month? And that's not a big problem. If I do it and get to work late every day, then it's a problem. So it's a matter of, as objectively as you can, just evaluating your behavior and the effects of it and seeing whether you feel this falls into something you need to correct, or is it just something you can put a little bit of attention to attend to solving the problem.
Yeah. The reason I've thought of this subject is I recently had a client who was in trouble with his wife because she didn't like it when he looked at porn and those things. So he worked on abstaining, not for his own personal interest, but more so his wife wouldn't be upset about it.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So as we've mentioned, the more somebody wants something, the easier it is to flip it into a demand. And we know that sexual urges are very intense desires, can be very intense desires. And it's real easy to flip them into demands, which is one of the reasons that you have such things as people getting arrested for sexually abusing other people. They start ruling out the consideration of other people and only think of themselves because they start believing that because they want something so intensely, they have to have it. And
That's
no matter how much we want anything, we don't have to have a darn thing, no matter how much we want it.
right. We don't even have to have life. And one day we're all not going to have it.
Well, yeah, but not simultaneously.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to mention about this?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground here.
I think there
So,
might be something else I could think of.
yeah.
It's Well, actually, it's very interesting this as a topic because I know that Albert Ellis once almost lost his license, correct me if I'm wrong, for saying that there was nothing mentally disturbed about somebody if they masturbated. And I believe he almost lost his license for simply making that claim. Is that correct?
Well, that's close. What happened was he was interviewed on a radio program, and uh, and when he said that, they canceled the program.
Oh, but I think he came close to losing his license at one point over it.
Was his license involved? I don't recall that part.
Yeah, and they canceled. Okay.
Yeah,
But anyway, times have changed.
right.
However, I do see bozos today advocating complete abstinence from any masturbating whatsoever. They think there's something wrong with it, whereas there's nothing wrong with it. And as far as men are concerned, it actually is quite healthy for you to be able to ejaculate on a fairly regular basis. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've covered most of that. So I'd like to thank Chris Rossini, our tech engineer, for the technical side of this. If you have comments about what we discussed, comments below. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. Suggest subjects or volunteer for future podcasts. And again, I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, clinical psychologist and author. My co-host is Mick Berry, who's also an author on REBT and other subjects. And subscribe to the 3 Minute Therapy podcast to do what, Mick?
You stay on the rational side of life and masturbating.